Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of Stories from the Black Kitchen. In today's episode, we turn our attention to John Dowland's third and last book of songs from 1603, especially to the first song of the collection, titled Farewell Too Faire. Dowland's third book was registered at the Stationers' Hall on the 21st of February 1603, during a particularly tumultuous period in England's history. At this time, Queen Elizabeth I, whose health had long been a subject of concern due to her advanced age, began to suffer from a severe illness. Her deteriorating state of health soon became a matter of state, with the Queen's condition directly affecting the political stability of the nation. This period, during which the Queen's bodily troubles intensified, is remarkably well documented through letters and official records, most notably those of Robert Cecil, her Secretary of State. This was a very dangerous time, for a bloodbath could have ensued had Elizabeth failed to designate a successor in time and died without an heir. Claimants to the English throne were plentiful. As John Stow, in his Summary of the Chronicles of England, in the last edition from 1604, reports, when Elizabeth fell seriously ill in March, straight watches were kept in the city of London, with warding at the gates, lanterns with lights hanged out to burn all night. Given the bloody aftermath of Henry VIII's death, there was genuine fear of riots, even civil war. Suspected persons were arrested, and additional guards were posted in nearly every town of the kingdom. Before this, Elizabeth's robust health had been widely acknowledged. She had rarely been struck by illness, and her vitality had become almost legendary. In fact, at the onset of her illness, Robert Cecil wrote, "Until within the last 10 or 12 days, I had never observed any other signs of sickness in the Queen, save those typically associated with advanced age." Although the death of a monarch at the age of 69 was not particularly remarkable at the time, Elizabeth had, over the 45 years of her reign, become something more than just a ruler. She was a symbol of stability, order, and harmony within the state. She was, in the eyes of her subjects, more divine than human, and thus her frailty and illness, and ultimately her sudden death, were a shock to all. While death itself was an ever-present and natural part of life for the people of the time, the Queen's passing was final, absolute, and irreversible, disrupting the established order and introducing fear of the unknown. For John Dowland and his contemporaries, the world as they knew it was ending. After 1603, Dowland would never write another book of songs in the same way as his previous three, each released within 3 years and each containing 21 songs that were deeply tied to the Queen and to the Earl of Essex. The Queen's physical decline was compounded by profound grief. Elizabeth was deeply affected by the execution of her former favourite, the Earl of Essex, in 1601. His execution, which the Queen herself had been forced to order, struck her a blow from which she could never recover. The sorrow that followed was described as a settled and unremovable melancholy, and according to an anonymous letter from the time, the Queen was often seen weeping over Essex's death, sitting shedding of tears to bewail Essex. With Essex's death, Elizabeth lost everything. Perhaps Essex had been the last person with whom she could truly be herself, someone with whom she could engage in long conversations, feeling valued not only as a monarch, but simply as a human being. In her final days, Elizabeth was tormented by thoughts that it had been most dishonourable to pardon a rebel, she meant Lord Tyrone of Ireland, a rebel that had made 7 years' war with her, whereas she would not be permitted to spare Essex for 1 day's derelict. This passage can be found in a letter from Anthony Rivers from the 9th of March 1603. 3 days before her death, Elizabeth lost the ability to speak. Her speech left her, as numerous letters record. There are accounts that in her final days the Queen kept her thumb in her mouth, unwilling to let it go. The silence in her chambers was profound. She passed away between 2 and 3 in the morning on the 24th of March, 1603, at Richmond Palace. There is an account of her passing by John Manningham, who was a secretary to one of her priests. He says, "This morning about 3 o'clock, Her Majesty departed this life, mildly like a lamb, easily like a ripe apple from a tree." In the same letter, he also believes that she is amongst the royal saints in heaven in eternal joys. Dowland's book, particularly in the opening song Farewell Too Faire, reflects on the public persona of Elizabeth, an image of beauty, chastity and divine favour. The text, which describes her as fair, chaste, dear and much desired, presents an idealized vision of the Queen as a near-divine, goddess-like figure. Yet, rather than simply lamenting her passing, the song invites the listener to contemplate a journey beyond the mortal realm, a crossing into a metaphysical sphere. Renaissance magic was centered on the idea that through certain rituals and actions one could influence both the visible and the invisible worlds. Any book, if conceived and written appropriately, could serve this purpose. A book containing music was particularly powerful in this regard. The third and last book of songs of John Dowland can also be interpreted as a masque, a theatre. The last masque for the dying queen, a dramatic and symbolic farewell to the monarch and an invitation for her to join Essex in the afterlife. Through this first song, Farewell Too Faire, through the final farewell, yet another book brimming with Renaissance magic is unlocked and we enter the realm of the spirits. We bid farewell to the Queen and to the passing of the order of the world she leaves behind.
Farewell too fair, too chaste but too cruel. Discretion never quenched, fire with swords. Why hast thou made my heart thine anger's fuel? And now and dwell